Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, Felony Friday, the only show where each and every week we focus on exposing injustice in this nation's broken criminal justice system. Today on Felony Friday, got a unique episode, something I've never done before. Going to be speaking with Ro Clausen. She is the wife of a guy, of her husband, who is serving 213 years, a 213-year sentence in federal prison. So we're going to talk with her on everything from how she deals with that, being in a relationship with someone in prison, how you get a 213-year sentence, what happens there, and how possibly her husband, Adam, can get out much, much earlier. So I'll introduce Ro in just a minute. Before I do that, I just want to remind you that this is one of three shows, one of our three formats on the Lions of Liberty podcast. We have our format every Monday. That show is hosted by Mark Claire. It is our flagship program where Mark interviews leaders in the Liberty movement. He'll host some debates, some back and forths on controversial topics. And on every Wednesday, we have our show hosted by Brian McWilliams. It is your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty. Brian's doing a great job with that show. Definitely check that out. And every Friday, of course, Felony Friday, you can get all three of these shows in your podcast feed by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Get each show magically delivered to that little phone in your pocket and just plug those earbuds in. Or maybe you have Bluetooth earbuds or Bluetooth headphones. You don't even need to plug them in. Just shows up on your phone, you sync it up, and you hit play, and bam, beautiful Lions of Liberty playing in your ears. It's magical. 2019, it's a great time to be alive, guys. This week's episode, Felony Friday, is the 179th episode, which means the show notes page can be found at lionsofliberty.com/FF179. Let's start the interview. My guest today on Felony Friday is Ro Clausen. Since 2001, Ro's husband, Adam, has been serving a 213-year sentence in federal prison. Ro has decided to use her experience to help others to avoid the pain that she has felt while figuring out how to deal with having a husband serving this much time in prison. Ro has a YouTube channel called Strong Prison Wives, where she makes videos in relation to being a strong prison wife. She shares crazy visit stories, how-tos, Q&As, visit outfits, lifestyle hacks, reviews, vlogs, interviews, and live streams. Ro, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we were talking in the pre-show chat. You are the first prison wife that I've had on the show. So my audience is used to hearing from, people who've been through the system and getting that angle of it. But, I think it's just as important, especially I have a lot of listeners out there who have loved ones who are in prison, to hear from somebody who is who's living through having their husband locked up in a federal prison. So good place to start, where I start with most of my guests before we get into talking about your YouTube channel and actually talking about your husband, what he's serving time for, all of that. Let's just start with some general background on you so my audience can sort of start to relate to you. So if you could just tell us where you're from, where you grew up, just general stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'm from New Jersey, and you'll be able to tell from my crazy New Jersey drawl accent that I can't get rid of and I hate. Originally, I'm from Long Island, which that accent is a million times worse, and sometimes you'll hear that come out too. But basically lived in the suburbs. I went to school in North Carolina at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and then I moved back to Jersey, and I've been here the rest of my life.
Okay, so your whole life in New Jersey, and your husband obviously is serving long sentence in prison. We'll get into the details on that. So how did you meet your husband?
Adam and I knew each other when we were younger, and then he went away to prison. This isn't his first, unfortunately. He's a recidivist. It's not his first prison sentence. So he went away to prison, and I went away to college, and we lost touch. So by the time he had gotten out, I had moved on. I had a different boyfriend. He had different girlfriends. I came home from college, and honestly, I thought about him every now and again, but I never thought to reach out or anything like that. So I had no idea that he had gone back to prison until about 10 years later, when a mutual friend had gotten us back in touch. And so we got back in touch while he was inside of prison. It was about 2009 when we got back in touch. And we've been together since.
So you guys knew each other first in high school. Did you date in high school? And
here and there, but not really seriously.
So he spent what, four years in prison or so, you said, to start out with, in his first time he was in prison?
He wound up getting out on parole, and he served about 3.
And what was that for?
Robbery.
That was for robbery.
Yeah.
And so you didn't know him at the time when he got his second sentence, or you weren't dating him at the time, or weren't together, right?
Correct. Yep. We weren't in touch at that point.
So can you just so how did you get back in touch, or you just heard that he was in prison and reached out to him, or?
Yeah, we had a mutual friend that got us back in touch and connected us through email, because in the federal prison system, they have an email system called Core Links. And so they're able to add an email address, it gets approved, and then you can communicate via email. Basically back and forth. It's not instant like we have it out here. There's about a 2-hour delay, but he added me to his Core Links account, and we started communicating through email, and then that turned into phone calls, and then that turned into visits, and it kind of just organically grew from there.
So, I mean, probably a lot of people out there are wondering, so you started dating him while he was in prison. Did you have any reservations about that at the time? Thinking back, were you concerned what people would think, or like, what did you have any reservations?
Yeah, of course. And it's funny, I just shot a video for my YouTube channel, which I just need to make a correction. I accidentally changed my name on YouTube because I had to send a professional email, and I didn't want it to come from the prison wife. I wanted it to come from my name. And I didn't realize if I changed it on my Gmail, it would also change it on my YouTube channel. And I can't change it back for a while, but that's okay, because I kind of like it. So it's just, people search Strong Prison Wives. It's a dead channel. There is a channel, but there are no videos on there, maybe one. That's my nonprofit organization, is Strong Prison Wives and Families. And we have a social media presence everywhere as at Strong Prison Wives, or strongprisonwivesandfamilies.com is our website. But my YouTube channel is actually just under my name, Ro Clausen.
Okay. I guess I didn't notice that. I was on it today. I don't know how I found it, but yeah, it came up, and your videos were there. So I guess I just searched your name. I can't remember.
It could be, or if you search prison wife, a lot of my videos pop up right at the top.
Right.
But anyway, so I just filmed a YouTube video about that exact situation, what you're asking about. And of course I had reservations, and all of my friends had reservations, and all of my family had reservations, because it's not a normal situation to get yourself into. And I remember at this time I had gone to visit, and then right afterwards I was talking to one of my friends, and she asked me how visit went, and I was like, it was great. And then I started to get really emotional, and she goes, if it was great, why are you crying? What's wrong? And I said, because this is like a huge joke from God or the universe or whatever, that he's perfect for me. It's like a day had never passed. It was like the best date I had ever been on, but it was in a prison visiting room, and it was somebody who was stuck there for the rest of his life. Now, let me just clarify and say that, Adam, we can get into his sentence in a minute, but nobody was hurt physically during his crime. They actually stacked mandatory minimum sentences on top of each other unjustly. So there's about 3,000 people that have been sentenced under the same law that he was sentenced under. So it's not like, and I don't mean this against anybody, I don't judge anybody, but I wasn't going after somebody who had serious violence on their record, or serious manslaughter, or any kind of homicide charges, or anything against children. And not to take away from the fact that his crime was extremely serious. And Adam did deserve to do time, and a whole chunk of time. But the largest amount of time that he should have been able to get under the guideline range for his crime was actually 0 to 20 years. So the max, if he had tons of criminal history points, should have been 20 years. But like I said, they stacked all of these charges on top of one another to kind of use it as this little weapon to get him to cooperate and take the government's plea, which he didn't want to do. And he took his case to trial, and he wound up losing. He basically got punished by the government for going to trial. So I say that to say that it was such an unfair thing. I think that kind of helped open my heart to say he's a wonderful person. He did not deserve this. And anything that any of my friends or my family would say to me, I would tell them back, you're not telling me something that I haven't thought about 10 times over. You know, these are things like, I'm taking a risk for once in my life. I'm following my heart. And that dear friend who was actually a bit younger than me at that point, who I was talking to after that first visit, told me, she said, listen, she said, you need to follow your heart. You always do what everybody wants you to do. You always do everything for everyone else. Whatever that looks like, you need to follow your heart and you need to go with it for as long as your heart's invested. And that's what I decided to do. No expectations. He had no expectations. And we just took it one day at a time. And of course, it's been so long. We still take it one day at a time, but I don't see myself walking away. And we're fighting every single day to get the sentence overturned. And of course, it took a while, but we have about 4 or 5 avenues open right now at this moment to potentially get him home, hopefully pretty soon.
Let's talk about some of those, but first I just want to talk about just criticism in general for a minute.
Yeah.
And this is like some of the most intense criticism because, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that this particular situation, probably most people would criticize it, but you know, just criticism in general, it's sort of like a mirror that people hold up to sort of justify their own opinions. So most people could never even imagine being in the situation that you're in, right? So they are just assuming if they were in that situation that they would react in a certain way. They would never put themselves in that situation. They could never, you know, fall in love with someone in prison, any of those things. So just by criticizing, they're saying, oh yeah, I'm right. Okay, that's good. Then they hear other people criticize and it just sort of snowballs from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of on the flip side with my husband on the inside, people tell him all the time, I don't know how you do that, how you were able to take that sentence and remain so positive. He started a life coaching program for other inmates while he was in there. He was actually part of, him and another inmate reached out to the dean of a life coaching academy, and they were able to have her shape a program that was specifically for people in prison. And they were part of this very first class that went through. And so now what he does is he developed this whole entire program in conjunction with that school, with that organization. And he helps guys get that skill, life coach each other while they're in there. And then now they have this skill where they can go out into the free world when they're done and they can start at $100 an hour. That's basically what life coaches start at. So he has been so positive. He just takes everything in stride. He sees the silver lining in everything, where other people who are basically critics say, oh, I would have ended a long time ago. I would have done this. I would have done that. And sure, until you're walking a mile in somebody's shoes, it's very easy to say that. And same with my relationship. You can't understand unless you're in my shoes. And that's really why I developed my organization, Strong Prison Wives and Families, because there really was nothing out there to support people who are going through what I went through for so long. And you feel lonely and you feel judged and you feel ostracized. And you spend nights and weekends and sometimes holidays and special occasions alone, or you get invitations to weddings or parties and you decline because it's gut-wrenching to have to be able to do those things either by yourself or field 5,000 questions about where your loved one is. So I developed the organization to let everybody know that they're not alone and to help them avoid the pain and the hardships that I felt for all of those years that I was doing it by myself. So yes, it's easy to judge and it's easy to throw shade at one another, but really you should try to see the good in people and not judge one another.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I had no idea that he was doing the life coaching program, but you know, I tell people all the time, and you know, you said we'll talk about those avenues that he can hopefully get out eventually, but most people who are in prison are going to get out eventually. And, a lot of people think of prison as, it should be tough in there on them. It should be terrible conditions. Who cares? That they made a mistake. Even if people generally disagree with a certain law, they say, well, the law's there, they broke it, send them to prison. But at the end of the day, people are going to get out. I mean, don't you want them to be actually rehabilitated and be better when they come out and not pick up bad habits and, really go criminology 101 while they're in prison? But, I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah. And you know what? It's really sad because public perception is that whole 3 hots and a cot and, oh, I want to go to jail because I don't have to pay rent and you get 3 meals a day. And people, I think, have to, that's what the government puts out there. That's what the state puts out there, because it's good guys, bad guys. We're keeping you safe. We're keeping these criminals off the street, which to an extent, of course, I believe in prison. I believe that people need to go and get rehabilitated. What the public doesn't realize is it has turned into such corruption. There is very little rehabilitation on the inside unless the inmate does it on his or her own. That's really sad. I recently did a YouTube collaboration on my channel with a man named Brian Bruton, who actually served 11 years in a Florida state prison. And he was talking to me about all of the crazy corruption that happened on the inside that he saw with his own eyes. And it was mind-blowing to me, somebody who's lived this every day for over 10 years. So it's very different. The public sees something very, very differently than those of us who are involved in justice.
Absolutely. So let's backtrack for a minute here and talk about the crime that Adam committed. So you talked about the stacking of the sentences, and I think I heard you mention that the actual statute in the First Step Act of that crime can no longer be stacked going forward, but it didn't impact Adam retroactively, right?
Correct.
Not yet. But can you just kind of share exactly, what the crime was and how how those different sentences stacked upon each other?
Sure. Yeah. So Adam was 23 years old when he committed his crime. And I just want to reiterate that Adam deserved to do time and he deserved to do a chunk of time. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying, oh, he should get off or he should have gotten off with a light sentence. No, he absolutely needed to be there. He wouldn't be the man that he is today without going to prison. But 213 years, So when he was 23 years old, he committed a string of robberies. In his young, immature mind, he figured robbing criminals wasn't really that bad. Now, of course, at 43 years old, he understands that robbing anybody is wrong and it's absolutely something that deserves punishment. So at 23, he did these robberies. There were 9 of them. He robbed 9 illegal establishments, and he was charged with under a law called Hobbs Act robbery. Now, if his case was charged in the state, which it should have been, he would have gotten 8 to 12 years. But the feds came in and then they took over his case because he was living in South Jersey at the time and committed his crimes in the city of Philadelphia. So he carried the money over state lines. Therefore, the federal government was able to come in and charge him. They were able to take over this case, and that's what happened. And so they said to him, listen, because you had a gun in your possession, in your pocket, it was not brandished, it was never discharged. Again, very serious matter. But because it was on him, they were allowed to add this enhancement where the first offense was 5 years, and then at the second and every subsequent offense was another 25 years, and then 25 years and 25 years. And it's actually the only law in the U.S. Constitution that's written where the charges need to be stacked on top of each other and run consecutively, one after another, versus concurrently where they can lump them all together and just give them a 25-year sentence. So it was 8 years for the Hobbs Act for the underlying crime, plus 5 years for the first robbery with the gun, and then 25 plus 25 plus 25, and it created this 213-year sentence. Basically because he chose to go to trial. They asked him to cooperate. They asked him to tell a story about a man he didn't even know, because he was not willing to do that and never in a million years thought that he would get a life sentence for 9 robberies. He decided to go to trial and he wound up getting punished.
What did his fellow co-defendants, did they take plea deals, or what happened with them?
So he had two co-defendants that got 0 time. They cooperated. He had
Wow.
one that, he had one that got acquitted on a few of the charges. So he did 10 years. He's out. He's so successful now. He's doing amazing. And then there was one more that I believe he got 80 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's just incredible. And so it's so crazy to think too, this is all just, Philadelphia and South Jersey. And people that don't know Philadelphia, South Jersey is basically a part of Philadelphia, isn't it? Is that fair to say? I went to Penn State, and I have a lot of friends from the Philly, Jersey area. I've spent some time there, and half the time you don't know where you are. I mean, what state you're in, but you cross a bridge, you're in Jersey. But
exactly. And Adam and I always joke, because I'm from North Jersey, he's from South Jersey. So I say the city, I'm talking about New York City. He says the city, and he was talking about Philadelphia because, like you said, it's right there. That's their backyard.
That's amazing. So you talked about a couple different avenues that he could get a sentence reduced, or maybe get clemency or a pardon or something like that, possibly. So what are those different options for him?
So like you said, there's clemency. We're hoping for that. That's basically our moonshot, because the president has to sign off on his petition for his mercy. And then right now there is a case going through the Supreme Court where, in 2016, there was a case, Johnson versus the United States, where this man, Mr. Johnson, challenged the terminology crime of violence in the statute that he was sentenced under, which was 924E, the Armed Career Criminal Act. Adam is sentenced under 924C, which is the firearm statute. So in 924E, in the Johnson case, they came back and they said, yes, crime of violence is too vague, because violence to you might mean something completely different than violence means to me. Mm-hmm. So the Supreme Court said yes. Everybody on 924E either was resentenced, sent home. We're all like, yes, Adam's coming home, because it's the same terminology. A couple years later, this was last year in April 2018, another case came through, Damaya versus the United States. Damaya was an immigration case, but it was same terminology in there. Crime of violence was challenged for being too vague, and the statute was 16B that they were challenging. 16B is used interchangeably with 924C, the statute Adam was sentenced under. The government said, yes, you're right, too vague, done. So those people were starting to get out, and we were all like, yes. So people who were sentenced under the same law as Adam, 924C, started filing appeals under Damaya. Right. A few people started getting out. Every district started ruling differently. Some districts said no. Some districts said, of course, those people were getting out. So because there was such discrepancy, the Supreme Court picked up another case, U.S. versus Davis. Oral arguments for Davis were in April, and now we're waiting for the Supreme Court's decision. Davis is a 924C specific case challenging the terminology crime of violence. So the opinions are handed down every Monday. There's only 3 Mondays left in June before the end of the session. So we're hoping we're going to hear something within the next couple of weeks and then go from there. We are nowhere near out of the woods, but if it's a favorable decision for us, then we'll be able to take the next step and hopefully get him time served, if for all intents and purposes for this interview. And then there's a couple of other things that I can't really talk about yet because they're in the early stages and it's legal and you know how that goes. But there's about 2 or 3 other things that we're exploring right now too.
So how much time has he served on this sentence then?
In February, it was 19 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is a long time.
A long time.
Unbelievable that, unbelievable in this country that we even have 213-year sentences. And I think I remember hearing you in another interview, or maybe it was on one of your YouTubes, talking about how one of the jurors actually said if they knew that he was going to spend this much time in prison, that she wouldn't have convicted. Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know this, but the jury is not aware of how much time a person will be sentenced to. So it doesn't alter their decision. But yeah, in Adam's case, a juror came back afterwards and said exactly what you just said. No, if I had known, there's no way this man deserves a life sentence for this. And he's not the only one. His case isn't the only case sentenced under 924C where a juror has come back, or even the judge has said, I don't want to do this. Actually, there's a famous 924C case. The man was named Weldon Angelos.
Yeah, he's been on this show.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
So you know his case very well.
Yeah.
His judge stepped down, Paul Casal, because he said, I don't want to sentence this man for 3 minor marijuana deals, because there was such a small amount of marijuana. And he had a gun, I believe, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but in an ankle holster. And he didn't even show it. The only reason why they knew he had that gun is because they were set up, and he was talking about it to the informants that he sold these 3 small marijuana deals to, and he wound up getting 55 years. And the judge felt so bad, he gave him 1 day for his underlying crime and then stepped down. He said, this is so unfair. And thankfully, President Obama was able to negate Weldon's sentence. I don't know exactly what happened there legally, but that's what we're trying to do as well. And he's become kind of a spokesperson for 924C because he was basically the poster boy while he was inside for how unfair this is.
Yeah, and he has a lot of influence within the rap community, being that's what he was doing. Yeah, before it wasn't like he was primarily selling drugs at the time. He was a pretty big time producer, I think. At the time that he was arrested. So let's talk about your YouTube channel and Strong Prison Wives. So what motivated you to start this YouTube channel? What motivated you to, I don't know if you're the founding member of Strong Prison Wives or how the organization's set up, but how did that all come about?
So I was going through this for a few years, and I just felt like nobody understood me. I decided I wanted to search online one day to see if there was anybody out there who was going through what I was going through. And this was back in 2011. And the things I found basically lived to this stigma. We're kind of glorifying and glamorizing street life and dating a criminal and all of this stuff. And I just thought, we could do so much better than this. There has to be something better out there. And I couldn't find it, so I created it. So what I did at that point was I started making YouTube videos. I started my channel and I searched online, and I found this woman who was running a small little, back at that time, it was a blogger blog. And at the time it was really popular to ask people to guest author on your blog. So I reached out to her and I said, I'd love to guest author for you. And we developed a friendship. And then we decided to kind of merge. She was a writer. She actually worked for a magazine at the time. And I was doing my YouTube videos at the time. So we combined forces and we co-founded what's now Strong Prison Wives, or what was at the point Strong Prison Wives. Her husband at that time was waiting to be sentenced. He was in a New Jersey prison. She was actually in Idaho, and he was waiting for federal charges of felon in possession, which is usually an automatic mandatory 10 years. So we did this for about 9 months together. During that time, they dropped all the charges against him, and he was awarded an early release. He went home. She immediately got pregnant. She was doing it here and there, but she wound up having her baby as early as you can have a baby. I think it was like 24 or 26 weeks that they could survive, but he was so ill. His lungs were barely developed. Wow. She wound up having to quit her job. Yeah, it was terrible. He's wonderful now. He's a beautiful, I think, 4-year-old boy. He's doing great. But at that point, it was day to day. They didn't know if he was going to make it. So she called me up one day and she said, Ro, listen, she said, I have to step away. I have to take care of my baby. I don't have time for this. She said, you can do whatever you want to do with it. She said, you can pull it all down or you can keep going, but I just can't help. And I said, I get it. No problem. That night, I was actually in the hotel room because my husband he's at a facility 6 hours away from my home. So I have to drive the night before, get a hotel room and stay there. And I had gotten some hate on a couple of my YouTube videos, oh, she's just like the rest of them. She's crazy. Those are the nice things that I could say publicly. So I
can imagine the comment section on YouTube it's the worst, but
it's the worst. I mean, and I could say I'm very blessed because for all the hate I've gotten probably triple, quadruple, if not more, the positive comments. Our mind, we just get stuck on the negative.
Right.
But that night I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm doing this all for nothing and I'm getting torn apart. So I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I was like, nope, this needs to keep going. It's bigger than me. These people need this. We all need to be there for each other. Not only am I going to keep going, I'm going to incorporate as a nonprofit because that was the next logical step. We were growing like 500 members a day at that point.
Wow.
So, yep, we incorporated as a nonprofit. I added N families because at that point we started getting mothers and we started getting husbands and we started getting pen pals and friends and other types of family members. So it became Strong Prison Wives and Families. That was back in 2015, and we've just been growing and going ever since. So in about 2012, I work a full-time job, corporate America, and I do this all on the side in my spare time, which is very, very limited. So
I can imagine.
Yeah, and I don't talk about my relationship at work because I've been at my job for a really long time, and I need that job to be able to go visit my husband. I have accrued a lot of vacation days. I use those vacation days to drive out to Pennsylvania, as well as I need to pay the bills. I mean, I'm the only person making money in our household. So I was confronted by a coworker who found my YouTube channel and my life for boyfriend. And so I got scared and I decided to play small and I pulled down all of my videos because
Did she threaten you or something, or you just got spooked a little bit?
I got spooked. There was no threat. In fact, I pulled him out in the hallway and I was like, you need to knock this off. It's none of your business and it needs to die here before this goes to HR. And to be honest, they were just being gossipy. It wasn't any kind of threat or anything like that. I was just afraid because I had been involved in this community that I built for so long that I heard of people who lost their job for other things right after people found out that they were involved with somebody who was incarcerated. So I was really nervous about potentially losing my job. So anyway, they knocked it off. Nobody's ever said a word to me about it since. But this last summer, I was working with somebody who was helping me with my marketing, and he had all of my passwords to everything. And he said, it's time for you to stop playing small. And he took, I think I only had about 350 videos on YouTube at that point. They were all just made private, and he made them all public. He goes, go, keep going. And that's what I did. And I've been on fire ever since. And I post 3 times a day. I post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I'll do a live video a couple times a week, if not once a week in between.
Yeah. I mean, you have an incredible amount. I don't know how many there were, but I was just scrolling through your library. You have a lot of content there.
Yeah.
And yeah, can you just talk through I know I mentioned in my intro, some of your most popular videos, but there's some real useful stuff for people who have a loved one serving time in prison, some things to look out for. So if you just want to give some ones for people to check out.
Of course. So a lot of my most watched videos are things about policy and procedure, what to where to visit, what not to where to visit. My most number one watch video is things that you should send, like how to spice up your letters and make them not just, here's my day, because it kind of gets monotonous, right? So you wake up in the morning and you go to work and then you have to go home and feed the kids and take care of the house. You go back to sleep, you rinse, you repeat. So it's hard to find things to write in a letter because you feel like you're doing the same thing on a hamster wheel every single day.
Right. And you don't want it to become a chore either. I mean, you don't want it to be like, I got to write another letter, right? I mean,
Exactly. So I made a video about things to spice that up. And then I just did one the other day about gifts that you could give to your loved one because we're very limited. So we have all of those kind of how-to videos. And then I have question and answers. I get tons of questions all day long. And then I have what I call, hacks, like prison hacks, things that they do on the inside to make their lives easier, because the most resourceful people on this planet are people inside of prison because they are so limited. So hacks for not only them, but us, like an app that I use every single time I go to visit. I use Google Keep, and I have a checklist in there of what to bring when I'm packing, just to make it faster and easier. So I share stuff like that. My gosh, you name it. Sometimes I'll just do video vlogs. The girls love those, just kind of at the peek into my life. And it's basically the mentality of, if she can do it, and she's been doing it for so long, and he had such a long time, and she's so positive, then what's my excuse? And that's not me patting myself on the back. I get that comment almost every single day.
So obviously you're fighting for Adam to get out early. Hopefully he does. Hope you can find out something, next Monday. Very positive. Hopefully you do. have you taken yourself mentally through, what if he doesn't get out? So how do you cope with those kinds of thoughts?
Yeah, of course I have. I mean, it's this huge roller coaster. So believe it or not, we were pushing for clemency in 2016 with President Obama, that big push.
Mm-hmm.
And we got word that Adam's petition made it to Joe Biden, the vice president's desk. So that was the last and final step that it needed to get through before it was approved. And unfortunately, we just ran out of time. So it was this huge emotional roller coaster. Adam said it was worse to experience that than it was to experience trial and getting his sentence. So at that point, it was this really high, like he's coming home, he was packing his bags, we were getting ready, and then these really low lows. And that's how it's been ever since we started getting little glimpses of him potentially coming out, because up until 2011, there was nothing. There was no kind of reform. There were no eyes on this. And ever since then, it's kind of become mainstream. And now you even have celebrities like Kim Kardashian and John Legend and Alicia Keys getting on board, because it's so, mass incarceration is just an epidemic in our country at this point. So yeah, I do think about when when I'm having those low points, if he will never come home. And we've kind of implemented this rule across Strong Prison Wives and Families that we take it in 24-hour chunks, 24 hours at a time. And if you're just depressed, you have bad news, you lost an appeal, something like that, you have 24 hours to wallow in it, then you're done. You have to get up the next day, you have to go to work, you have to face your responsibilities, you have to put on your big girl pants, and you got to go, because it's not going to make everything better. It's not going to make that black cloud lift from over your head. But eventually that black cloud will lift from over your head, because if you sink into that depression, it's just going to get worse and deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's going to be harder to climb yourself up out of it. So that's what I do. I take it in 24-hour chunks. And if I ever wake up one day and my heart changes or something changes, I don't foresee that, it's been so long, but that's something that I will talk through with him, because that's another thing that I talk about all the time in my community. The only way that you will successfully survive a prison relationship is 100% open, honest, and constant communication with that person on the inside. And that's what we live by.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like it's like a long distance relationship on steroids.
Yeah.
Making it even more limitations. But I want to thank you for being so generous with your time here. Before I let you go, if you could just tell people once again where they can find your YouTube channel. There's also a website where Adam's case is outlined, right? If you could mention that. I can't remember the name. And anything else you got?
Of course. Yeah. So my YouTube channel is just my name, first name Ro, R-O, last name Clausen, C-L-A-U-S. I'd love to see you over there. It's like my favorite thing in the world to do. It's crazy. I love making YouTube videos. I love being able to use my experience to help people, to kind of like, I was saying it the other day, like I kind of can help mold you, because it gives a purpose to my experience. It allows me to not become bitter and resentful against a system that stole my husband away from me unjustly. So what I could do is I can mold you and then kind of give you your wings and help you fly. And then when you do, it is so rewarding to me. So I'd love to see you over there. The website that we have for my nonprofit, Strong Prison Wives and Families, is www.strongprisonwivesandfamilies.com. That's spelled out A-N-D.
Okay.
And then Adam's website is helpfreeadam.com. Okay. And then parting words is, if you find yourself going through this, you are so much stronger than you know, and you will uncover a strength that you never knew existed within you. Don't listen to anybody else. Listen to people who count. So if somebody is telling you all of these red flags, then you know in your gut that those red flags are there, and you're choosing to ignore them because, oh, he's hot, or he's telling me all of these amazing things about myself, or making me all of these promises, but you know in your mind and in your gut that it's wrong, then you need to reevaluate and walk away. But if it's just naysayers and people that don't have a say in your life, they just want to talk crap about you, ignore them, put on your blinders, and you could do this. One day at a time, 24-hour chunks, you've got this. Me and I have a team of volunteers. We have 15 women who volunteer with me are so happy to help you through this. Just reach out to us and we're there for you. And you could also email me if you kind of are in the closet and don't want to be public on social media. It's strongprisonwives@gmail.com.
Okay, awesome. Ro Clausen, thank you so much for coming on Felony Friday.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I want to thank Ro Clausen for coming on today's show, sharing her stories, sharing everything that she is doing to help people, to help individuals, to help husbands, wives, family members get through the difficult time of dealing with a loved one serving time in prison. I think Ro brings a very unique perspective, and I really admire just the way she approaches the entire situation, her honesty and straightforward nature in talking about this. So really do hope to hear some positive news on her husband Adam soon. Hopefully it could be as soon as on Monday that we hear something in a positive direction for Adam getting out. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that. And one thing I didn't get a chance to talk about during the interview, but I did want to bring up, but didn't get a minute to talk about it. But I think it's interesting in the times that we live in. Ro was talking about criminal justice reform and how it's picked up steam, and definitely has. I mean, it started with Obama and it's carried over and just built incredible momentum under Trump. I think it's very interesting, very telling that one of the only things that everyone is united on, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, people who are apathetic to politics, almost everyone out there, unless they're living under a rock, is united on the fact that our criminal justice system is completely screwed up. People are spending way too much time in prison. They're spending time in prison for victimless crimes, for crimes that are nonviolent, spending way too much time. That makes no sense at all. That our system in itself is not rehabilitating people, not helping people, not giving them skills, not giving them the ability to hit the ground running when they get out to add value to society. Everyone agrees on this. That is so incredible for how divisive the conversation is right now in this country, that there can be such a unified front on criminal justice reform. So it will not surprise me if we continue, and I pray and I hope for continued massive changes. We really haven't had massive changes. We need massive changes to the criminal justice system. So there's hope going forward. You guys can get involved. You can help out by sharing this show, by visiting Ro's YouTube channel. I'll link to it on the show notes page, lionsofliberty.com/FF179. You can find all her links there. Support her, share her content as well, and tell your friends to check this show out, to check out the Lions of Liberty, and to subscribe to this podcast. And if you like what you hear, if you've been a long-time listener, please consider supporting us financially, becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And with that, I am done for the day, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Please enjoy your weekend. Have a safe weekend. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.